Derek Bell, the founder of critical race theory, appreciated Howard Thurman's emphasis on black spiritual survival, a self generated connection to God that cannot be taken from them, did not depend on legal or citizenship status. Now, I was told that when Derek Bell was dying, he asked that Howard Thurman, the Negro spiritual speaks of life and death, be read to him. In its final passage, it states that enslaved people discovered that God, and I quote, was not nor could he be exhausted by any single experience or any series of experiences. To know him was to live a life worthy of the loftiest meaning of life. Men in all ages and climes, slave or free, trained or untutored, who have sensed the same values are their fellow pilgrims who journey together with them. What I'm trying to say is that what Derek Bell was saying, that it was not the fault of the individual African American who had not risen to be president like Barack Obama did, but those structural problems in society that kept people as a group of African Americans to advance in society. So I think it's been quite misunderstood. Now it's used in different ways in different disciplines now. But the essence of it is that there are structural inequalities built into the institutions in America. And that even though the people who might be running those institutions are in charge of making it, are not racist at all, that the way society's institutions have developed over time, that they discriminate against and perpetuate the inequalities that have been in American society since slavery itself.
I take it from you that most of the people that are running the system, the machine of the United States, are not racist. No, let's take it like that. But
Well,
the
they may or may not be. What the critical race theorists are saying, it doesn't matter.
okay. So actually, my question is, let's assume that none of them is even racist, but at least they are good people and they want a fair society. They see that the system is not functioning in the interest of everybody because let's pretend that everybody is created equal according to the Constitution of the United States. Let's pretend that they are working to uphold that, which is the Constitution of the country. Can they do anything about it? Can they
Well,
influence their own behavior so that it become illegal to be discriminatory in this country, so that it become illegal for somebody to take advantage of other people because they belong to a certain group of the society? That is what I'm trying to understand.
yeah, and the law should do that now. But as we have seen, it really matters in terms of political parties. One of the problems is that critical race theory, race itself, is now being used by a political party or a large group of people in that political party as what we would call a racial dog whistle, which was explained by people who developed it long ago. The idea that after the Voting Rights Act of 1965, you could no longer use racist epithets, calling people the N word, things like that, saying that they were ignorant or not ready to be citizenship. So you use other words that would trigger the idea, the same racist ideas, but not using those words. So you saw it in particular with the development of the Southern Strategy under Richard Nixon, uh, when he particularly laid out the law and order campaign. But you saw it used explicitly with, in fact, Ronald Reagan, who would not use the N word, but would say things like welfare queen or strapping young buck to sort of conjure up this idea of dangerous African American. And it was used by both political parties sometimes. And it's come down today that just like busing, law and order, or these other terms, that critical race theory is being used as a way to trigger in people's mind race and racial divisions that help many people to mobilize white voters for one political party to think we are the party of white people and we're opposing the those who want to do positive things for African Americans. But it really does matter. The United States is not a parliamentarian form of government, and it matters very much who's elected president, because that president gets to appoint all the federal judges for life and the Supreme Court who rules on these laws. The laws are very clear that you cannot discriminate. The 13th Amendment, one of the things we discovered in the research in our book on the 13th Amendment is that it was interpreted to end, in fact, the badges of slavery, which are the kind of things we're talking about that critical race theory lays out. The inequalities in society, that when you go into a restaurant, the person taking your order will be a white person, or at the cash register, the person in the kitchen flipping the burgers could be black or perhaps Latinx or others. Those are badges of slavery that the 13th Amendment was supposed to end. So I think that it's how those laws are applied and who applies them that really matters. So the only weapon I think that people really still have is the vote, and the importance of the vote. That vote makes a difference, and it makes a difference in people's lives.
I have a curiosity. Now, we're talking about critical race theory. Before, you did also say that the race as a concept, as the people want us to believe, really doesn't exist in that context. No, it doesn't exist. No, it's only a social construct. And now we're talking of critical race theory. Is that not almost contradicting, as it were? Because now we want to preach this idea to people. Let me clarify that part.
Well, it's like with the election of Barack Obama. Everybody said, well, now, literally, we don't have to worry about race because we live in a post-racist society. And Stephen Colbert, back then, when he was on the Colbert Show and not doing the Late Show on television, he said, well, now that a black person has been elected president, we can say that slavery never existed, which is just not true, as we've seen following and after Barack Obama. It particularly stirred a lot of, once again, actions that could be interpreted as racist. Now, that's different, saying racism exists, but there's no such thing as race. So, as I pointed out before, we created a distinction between whites and blacks and other people of color within the law that made distinctions that could be used in society, both for good and bad.
All right. Another thing I was just thinking is, okay, it is both between law and policing in the United States. Maybe it's just my thinking, is it possible that in neighborhoods that are predominantly African American, there are a lot of white police that are policing that neighborhood? Maybe neighborhoods that are predominantly white, the people that are policing it are still white. I'm trying to understand the ratio of the people or the police that are policing certain neighborhood, and if there is anything, if you have to do with race in terms of how they do it. Because why I'm asking the question is that you see some of this incident of police brutality against African American, they are usually white police brutalizing people in African American neighborhood. So my thinking was that if these people, African American, were the one policing themselves, I mean, if the police that are sent there to police the environment were African American, maybe the result can be different. I'm just thinking. What do you think on that?
I think you're absolutely right. In several places, we've tried to do that, of course, increase hiring of African Americans and to try to have African Americans part of the police force in African American neighborhoods. It makes a huge difference, I think. Studies have shown that. And not only that, but to be part of the community, to understand the community, not be just an outsider, so that people will trust them